Did you know that hidden beneath the serene beauty of the Pacific Northwest, there lies a sleeping giant capable of unleashing a catastrophic earthquake that could dwarf even the San Francisco quake of 1906?
Wow.
Welcome to Zool Podcast, Shooting the Reality.
Yes.
I'm James Carroll.
And I'm Emily Laura.
And today, we're diving deep into the world of mega earthquakes and global disasters.
Right.
We've got a stack of fascinating research, historical accounts, and even some ancient Japanese records to help us understand what makes these events so devastating and uncover the hidden threats that may be closer to home than we think.
Absolutely.
So let's start by unpacking what makes these mega earthquakes, specifically megathrust earthquakes, different from your average everyday tremors.
Well, what makes them fascinating and terrifying is their sheer scale. We're talking about the most powerful earthquakes on the planet, the kind that can reshape coastlines and send shockwaves across entire continents. They happen at convergent plate boundaries, where one tectonic plate dives beneath another.
So it's like a slow-motion collision with unimaginable forces at play.
Exactly. And as these plates grind against each other, a zone called the locked zone builds up incredible stress over time.
I see.
Imagine a spring being compressed for centuries. Eventually, that spring snaps, and the rupture can be hundreds of miles long.
Wow.
Unleashing an immense amount of energy in a massive quake.
So we're talking magnitudes exceeding 9.0,
Right.
which is exponentially more powerful than the 7.8 that shook San Francisco in 1906.
Yes.
And we've seen the devastating consequences of these megaquakes in recent history. The 2011 Tohoku earthquake in Japan, for example, triggered a tsunami that caused widespread destruction and loss of life.
And let's not forget the 2004 Sumatra earthquake and tsunami that devastated coastlines across the Indian Ocean. Both of those were 9.0 magnitude. The largest earthquake ever recorded was the 1960 Valdivia earthquake in Chile.
Oh, wow.
A mind-blowing 9.4 to 9.6.
Right.
Each of these events left an indelible mark on our planet and serve as stark reminders of the immense power of nature.
It's sobering to think that we have a similar ticking time bomb right here in North America.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about the Cascadia subduction zone.
The Cascadia subduction zone stretches for about 600 miles along the Pacific Northwest coast.
Okay.
From Northern California to Vancouver Island. And like those other fault lines we mentioned, it's capable of generating a magnitude 9+ earthquake.
Wow.
The last major earthquake on the Cascadia subduction zone happened in 1700.
So that was before modern seismic monitoring, right? So how do we even know that this earthquake happened?
Well, it's actually quite fascinating. There weren't written records here at the time, but scientists have found compelling evidence in what they call ghost forests.
Ghost forests?
These are stands of dead trees along the coast that were suddenly submerged by land subsidence during the quake.
So the earth literally dropped, drowning these forests in salt water.
Precisely. And by analyzing the tree rings and sediment layers, scientists were able to pinpoint the earthquake's origin and date it back to 1700. What's even more interesting is that Japanese records from the same period document an orphan tsunami.
An orphan tsunami?
A tsunami with no apparent local earthquake to trigger it.
Wow.
Imagine a giant wave crashing ashore with no earthquake preceding it.
Gosh.
By carefully analyzing the timing and wave patterns, scientists were able to trace the origin of this tsunami back to the Pacific Northwest.
Wow.
They were able to piece together that the Cascadia earthquake happened around 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on January 26, 1700, sending a tsunami all the way across the Pacific Ocean.
That is incredible.
It's a remarkable example of how scientific detective work can unravel the mysteries of the past.
So we have this massive fault line capable of unleashing a megaquake.
Right.
And it's been building up stress for over 300 years. But it's not just the shaking we should be concerned about, right? What are some of the other devastating side effects that come with these megathrust earthquakes?
One of the most dangerous, of course, is tsunamis. When a megathrust earthquake displaces the ocean floor, it generates massive waves that can travel thousands of miles across the ocean at incredible speeds.
And we've seen the horrific power of those tsunamis in recent history.
Absolutely.
But there's another side effect that's less dramatic, but equally devastating. Liquefaction.
Right. Liquefaction occurs when the shaking from an earthquake turns solid ground into a liquid-like substance.
So it's not quite turning to mud.
No, but it becomes almost like quicksand.
How does that happen?
It has to do with the composition of the soil.
Okay.
When soil is saturated with water and then violently shaken, the water pressure increases,
Right.
and the soil particles lose contact with each other,
Yeah.
causing the ground to lose its structural integrity. It's like shaking a jar of sand and water. The sand loses its ability to support weight and starts to flow like a liquid.
And I imagine that's incredibly dangerous for buildings and infrastructure.
Absolutely, buildings can sink,
Yeah.
foundations can collapse, and
Yeah.
entire structures can be swallowed by the liquefied ground.
Wow.
The 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, which hit the San Francisco Bay Area, caused significant liquefaction in the Molina district,
Yeah.
an area built on landfill.
Oh, wow.
The effects were devastating, with buildings tilting and collapsing.
Didn't liquefaction also play a role in the catastrophic fires
Yeah.
that followed the 1906 San Francisco earthquake?
Yes, it did.
Wow.
The shaking from that earthquake ruptured gas lines throughout the city.
Okay.
And because the ground was liquefied, those ruptures were much more widespread
Okay.
and difficult to contain. The ensuing fires raged for days,
Okay.
causing more damage than the earthquake itself. It's a stark reminder that the impact of an earthquake often goes far beyond the initial shaking.
Speaking of unexpected consequences, are there any other hidden dangers we should be aware of?
Well, there's something called resonance
Resonance.
that can make the impact of an earthquake much worse for certain types of buildings. Seismic waves from an earthquake can resonate with buildings of certain heights,
I see.
leading to amplified shaking and a greater risk of collapse.
So it's not just the intensity of the shaking,
Right.
but also the frequency that can make a difference.
Exactly. Think of it like a singer shattering a glass by hitting the right note.
Right.
If the frequency of the seismic waves matches the natural resonance frequency of a building,
Okay.
the shaking will be amplified,
I see.
putting immense stress on the structure.
Is there a particular height that's most vulnerable to this resonance effect?
It depends on the frequency of the seismic waves and the ground condition. But a classic example is the 1985 Mexico City earthquake. Buildings between 6 and 15 stories tall were particularly vulnerable because their resonance frequency happened to match the frequency of the seismic waves, amplified by the soft lake bed underneath the city.
Wow.
Many of those buildings collapsed, while shorter and taller buildings fared much better.
I see.
It was a tragic demonstration of how resonance can make the impact of an earthquake highly unpredictable.
So we've got these megathrust earthquakes happening at plate boundaries. And then we have another type of earthquake that's even more mysterious and potentially dangerous.
Right.
Intraplate earthquakes.
Yes.
These are the ones that seem to pop up out of nowhere, right?
That's right. Intraplate earthquakes occur away from plate boundaries,
Okay.
often in areas thought to be seismically stable, and that's what makes them so difficult to predict and prepare for.
So since people aren't expecting earthquakes in these areas,
Yeah.
they're often caught completely off guard.
Exactly. A prime example is the series of earthquakes that hit New Madrid, Missouri,
New Madrid.
back in 1811 and 1812.
That's in the middle of the U.S.
I know, right?
Nowhere near a plate boundary.
But these were massive quakes estimated to be around magnitude 7.5 to 8.00.
Wow.
Powerful enough to temporarily reverse the flow of the Mississippi River
Wow.
and cause widespread damage over a vast area.
Those must have been terrifying.
There were even reports of church bells ringing as far away as Boston, and more recently, the 2001 Gujarat earthquake in India,
Okay.
which devastated the city of Bhuj, serves as a stark reminder that these seemingly random interplate quakes can be extremely dangerous.
So with these megathrust earthquakes happening at plate boundaries and these interplate earthquakes popping up seemingly at random,
Yeah.
it kind of makes you wonder, is anywhere truly safe from earthquakes?
That's a great question, and it leads us to a crucial point. What can we do to prepare for the unthinkable?
Right.
Because as we've seen, it's not a matter of if a major earthquake will hit. What are the long-term consequences of these mega earthquakes for the people and communities affected?
That's a crucial aspect we often overlook when we see those dramatic images of collapsed buildings and flooded streets. It's easy to get caught up in the spectacle of destruction. But the real story lies in the human cost, the long road to recovery, and the resilience of those who rebuild their lives from the rubble.
Precisely. And one of the most immediate and overwhelming challenges is the sheer scale of destruction. We're talking about events that can level entire cities, cripple infrastructure, and displace millions of people. Imagine the logistical nightmare of trying to provide food, water, shelter, and medical care to a population that's been scattered and traumatized.
It's hard to even fathom the magnitude of that challenge.
Yeah.
And it's not just physical damage, right? There's the psychological trauma that comes with experiencing such a catastrophic event.
Absolutely. The fear, the loss, the uncertainty, these are all very real and lasting effects. Post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression are common in the aftermath of a major earthquake. The sights, sounds, and smells of that day can be etched into people's memories, triggering flashbacks and panic attacks long after the shaking has stopped.
It's like an invisible wound that can linger for years, even decades.
And it's important to remember that recovery isn't a linear process. There will be setbacks, there will be challenges, and it's going to take a tremendous amount of time, resources, and resilience. Rebuilding homes, restoring infrastructure, revitalizing economies, these are all long and arduous processes that require coordination, community support, and a deep well of determination.
Speaking of resources, the economic impact of a mega earthquake can be absolutely staggering.
Right.
We're talking billions, even trillions of dollars in damage. Businesses are destroyed, supply chains are disrupted, and entire industries can be crippled.
And the economic ripple effects can be felt globally. We saw this in the aftermath of the 2011 Tohoku earthquake in Japan. The disruption to manufacturing and trade had a significant impact on the global economy, highlighting the interconnectedness of our world. A disaster in one part of the planet can have far-reaching consequences that we might not even anticipate.
It underscores the importance of global cooperation and the need for robust international aid systems to support countries that have been devastated by these events.
Absolutely. And it's not just about rebuilding physical structures. We need to address the social and psychological impacts as well. The social fabric of a community can be profoundly altered in the wake of a mega earthquake. Displacement, loss of loved ones, the breakdown of social structures, these are all challenges that communities face as they struggle to regain a sense of normalcy.
And in some cases, these challenges can lead to social unrest and even conflict. Resources become scarce, tensions run high, and the struggle for survival can bring out the best and worst in people.
It's a reminder that these disasters are not just about buildings and infrastructure. They're about people, about lives, families, communities, and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable hardship.
So as we look to the future, knowing that another mega earthquake is inevitable, what lessons can we learn from past events to better prepare for the next one?
One of the most important lessons is the need for better building codes and infrastructure design. We need to make sure that our buildings, bridges, and other critical structures can withstand the forces of a major earthquake. We've seen time and time again that buildings constructed to stricter seismic standards fare much better during earthquakes.
It's a proactive investment that can save countless lives and reduce the economic burden of rebuilding. What are some of the key features of these earthquake-resistant designs?
Well, it's not just about using stronger materials. It's about understanding how buildings move during an earthquake and designing structures that can absorb and dissipate the energy of those seismic waves. For example, base isolation systems use flexible bearings to isolate the building from the ground, allowing it to move independently during an earthquake and reducing the stress on the structure.
So it's like putting the building on shock absorbers.
Exactly. And we can incorporate other features like ductile detailing, which involves reinforcing concrete and steel connections to prevent brittle fractures. And in places with older buildings, retrofitting them to improve their seismic resistance is crucial, even though it can be a costly and challenging process.
And of course, early warning systems are essential, especially for tsunamis. The sooner people know an earthquake has happened, the more time they have to evacuate to higher ground.
Absolutely. Technology is playing an increasingly important role in earthquake preparedness. We now have sophisticated sensor networks that can detect earthquakes almost instantly, giving people valuable seconds, even minutes of warning before the shaking reaches them. And these systems are constantly improving, becoming more accurate and reliable.
But even with the best technology, public education is still crucial. People need to know what to do during an earthquake, drop cover, and hold on. Have a plan. Have a go bag. These simple steps can make a huge difference.
You're right. It's about empowering individuals and communities to take ownership of their safety and preparedness. Fostering a culture of resilience involves recognizing that these events will happen, learning from the past, and working together to build stronger, more prepared communities for the future. Because ultimately, it's not just about surviving a mega earthquake, it's about thriving in the aftermath. Rebuilding, adapting, and creating a new sense of normalcy in a world that has been irrevocably changed.
Now, as we shift our focus to the future, I'm curious, is there room for optimism? Can we as a global community truly prepare for the inevitable?
I believe there is room for cautious optimism. While we can't prevent earthquakes, we can certainly take steps to mitigate their impact and build more resilient communities. And one of the most promising avenues is continued investment in research and technology. We've come a long way in our understanding of earthquakes, but there's still so much we don't know.
Yeah, you're right. For example, We're still not great at predicting exactly when an earthquake will happen. We can identify high-risk areas and estimate probabilities, but pinpointing a specific date and time remains elusive.
That's true. Predicting earthquakes with pinpoint accuracy is still a scientific challenge. But the good news is that we're making significant strides in developing early warning systems. These systems use networks of sensors to detect the first waves of an earthquake, which travel faster than the more destructive waves. This gives people valuable seconds, sometimes even minutes, to take cover, shut down critical infrastructure, and even initiate automated safety measures.
I know Japan has invested heavily in early warning systems since the 2011 Tohoku earthquake. Have those systems proven effective?
Absolutely. During the 2011 earthquake and subsequent tsunami, those systems gave people enough time to move away from coastlines, seek higher ground, and even automatically shut down critical infrastructure like bullet trains and nuclear power plants. It undoubtedly saved countless lives.
That's incredible. So while we can't stop earthquakes from happening, technology can give us a fighting chance.
Precisely. But technology alone isn't enough. We also need to build stronger, more resilient infrastructure, and that starts with smart urban planning and robust building codes.
Makes sense. If you're building a skyscraper in an earthquake-prone zone, like San Francisco or Tokyo, you wouldn't design it the same way you'd design a building in a seismically stable area, right?
Exactly. Buildings in earthquake zones need to be designed to flex and sway, rather than being rigid and brittle. We can use materials like reinforced concrete, and steel incorporate features like base isolation systems to decouple the building from the ground and ensure that buildings are securely anchored to their foundations to resist the lateral forces of an earthquake.
And what about existing structures? I imagine there are a lot of older buildings, especially in historic cities, that weren't built to withstand a major earthquake.
That's a huge challenge. Retrofitting older buildings to make them more earthquake resistant can be expensive and complex, but it's crucial, especially for essential buildings like hospitals, schools, and emergency response centers. It's about prioritizing safety and investing in the long-term resilience of our communities.
We also have to remember that the damage doesn't stop with the initial shaking. We have to consider secondary hazards like fires, which, as we learned from the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, can be even more devastating than the earthquake itself.
You're absolutely right. Liquefaction from the 1906 earthquake ruptured gas lines all over San Francisco, leading to those devastating fires. So in addition to building earthquake-resistant structures, we need to make sure our utility systems, gas, water, electricity, are designed to withstand earthquakes. And we need robust fire suppression systems in place to minimize the risk of post-quake fires.
So it's a multifaceted approach: better technology, stronger buildings, smarter planning, and perhaps most importantly, a well-informed and prepared public.
Absolutely. Public education is paramount. Everyone living in an earthquake-prone area should know what to do during an earthquake, drop cover, and hold on. They should have a plan for their family, a go bag with essential supplies, and a way to communicate with loved ones if phone lines are down. It's about empowering individuals and communities to take ownership of their safety and preparedness.
And it's not just about individual preparedness. Communities need to work together to develop emergency response plans, evacuation routes, and systems for providing aid and support in the aftermath of a disaster.
Exactly. It takes a collective effort to build true resilience. Governments, businesses, community organizations, and individuals all have a role to play in making our world a safer place.
This has been a sobering, yet ultimately hopeful deep dive into the world of mega earthquakes. We faced the stark realities of these events, explored their potential for devastation, and acknowledged that another major earthquake is inevitable. But we've also seen the remarkable resilience of the human spirit, the ingenuity of science and technology, and the power of collective action to mitigate risks and build a more secure future.
I couldn't agree more. While the ground beneath our feet may tremble, our capacity for innovation, adaptation, and compassion remains steadfast.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into ZIL podcast, Shooting the Reality. We encourage you to check out our show notes for links to resources and ways to get involved in earthquake preparedness efforts. And don't forget to subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments. We always appreciate hearing from you.